Monday mornings at Harrison Enterprises typically meant spreadsheets, conference calls, and endless meetings. Michael Harrison, the company's CEO, certainly didn't expect to find a 5-year-old girl standing in his office doorway, wearing an oversized janitor's uniform. "Excuse me, sir," the little girl said with remarkable composure. "I came to work for my mommy today. She's sick and had to go to the hospital." Michael looked up from his computer. Startled, the child stood there with golden curls catching the fluorescent light, her tiny frame swimming in the adult uniform. The sleeves were rolled up multiple times, and the pants were secured with a shoelace. In one small hand, she clutched a spray bottle, in the other, a folded cleaning rag. "My name is Emma," she announced proudly. "My mommy's name is Sarah. She works here cleaning, but she's really sick today, so I came instead. I know what she does because she told me." Michael stared, wondering if this was an elaborate prank, but the sincerity in Emma's eyes convinced him otherwise. She genuinely believed this mission was hers to fulfill. "Emma," he said gently, standing slowly, "how did you get here?" She looked down at her scuffed pink sneakers. "I took the bus. Mommy showed me the stops. I used quarters from my piggy bank." "You took the bus by yourself?" Emma nodded matter-of-factly. "I remembered the building. It's the tall one with shiny glass and your company's name in big gold letters. One time when we passed it, I told Mommy I wanted to be a CEO here one day. She laughed, but I meant it." Michael's expression softened as she continued. "This morning, Mommy couldn't sit up. She was dizzy and said her chest hurt. I gave her water and told our neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. Then I remembered Mommy said if she misses work again, she might lose her job. So I came. I didn't want her to get in trouble." Michael sat down slowly. He'd negotiated billion-dollar mergers without blinking, but now a 5-year-old was undoing him with every word. "You came here to save your mom's job," he said quietly. Emma nodded earnestly. "She works really hard. She's the best mommy in the whole world." This child had somehow made it past security, taken an elevator to the top floor, and walked straight into his office. Not for mischief, but out of pure love. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Harrison, your finance meeting begins in 5 minutes." He pressed the button. "Cancel it, sir. All of it. Clear this morning's entire schedule." He turned back to Emma, who was watching him with wide, curious eyes. "Are you hungry?" She shrugged. "Do you have apple juice?" Michael smiled, walking to his office fridge. "I think I do," as he handed her the small bottle. He knew this moment would change everything. Emma settled by the window, her legs swinging as she sipped her juice, and Michael found himself captivated by her innocent determination. Something told him this wasn't just a surprising interruption, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. Sarah Mitchell was only 25, but her eyes held depths earned from surviving more than most women twice her age. She moved through life with quiet grace, accustomed to making herself invisible. Her once envied golden hair was now pulled back in a hurried ponytail, and her gentle smile often masked the exhaustion she carried. Not long ago, she had been a rising star, top of her class in computer science, praised for her analytical mind and creative problem-solving. She dreamed of working for tech startups in Silicon Valley, but all those dreams vanished the day she met James Mitchell. He was older, charming, full of promises about their future together. She was young, hopeful, and utterly unprepared for the heartbreak that followed. By the time she realized his love was empty, she was holding a positive pregnancy test. When she told James, he disappeared without a word. Her devoutly religious family responded with cold shame. "You're throwing your life away," her father said. Her mother wept, begging her to fix this mistake. But Sarah had already heard the baby's heartbeat. That tiny sound was enough. They disowned her a week later. She left with 2 suitcases and no safety net, facing a world that suddenly seemed impossibly cold. She slept on couches, worked odd jobs, cleaning houses, babysitting, waitressing, anything to survive. Her body ached throughout the pregnancy, but each night she whispered to her unborn child, "I'll never leave you." Emma was born during a January storm, in a crowded hospital with only a kind nurse present. When they placed her daughter in her arms, Sarah knew that moment marked the beginning of everything that truly mattered. Over the next 5 years, Sarah rebuilt her life piece by piece. When she landed the janitorial position at Harrison Enterprises, she took it with quiet gratitude. The work was grueling and thankless, but it came with steady hours and health insurance, which meant survival. Warmth, food, and bedtime stories for Emma. She worked night shifts after the building emptied, memorizing every floor's layout, every creaky elevator, every stubborn stain. No one knew her name, but the building sparkled because of her dedication. Sarah was thin, not from dieting, but from ensuring Emma ate first. Her immune system, weakened by long hours and skipped meals, couldn't fight off the lingering cough that developed during winter. She ignored it, having no choice. But that morning, the chest pain became sharp. Every breath burned, and the room spun when she tried to stand. As she collapsed back onto her bed, Emma rushed to her side. "Mommy, you're really sick," Emma said, her tiny hand gripping Sarah's. Their neighbor called an ambulance. Within minutes, Sarah was surrounded by beeping machines and medical voices discussing oxygen levels and lung inflammation. But her thoughts weren't on her condition, they were on next week's rent, groceries they needed, and the job she might lose. What Sarah didn't know was that at that very moment, her determined daughter was already taking matters into her own hands. Michael had canceled an entire morning of meetings. But for once, he felt no guilt. Something about the little girl sitting by his window, sipping apple juice with her legs swinging, made time seem irrelevant. "Is it hard being the CEO?" Emma asked, genuinely curious. Michael smiled. "Some days, there's a lot of responsibility." Emma nodded knowingly. "Mommy says when you take care of something really big, it's important to remember the little things too." That sounded less like a child's observation and more like profound wisdom. Michael found himself genuinely intrigued. Emma finished her juice and carefully placed the empty bottle on his desk. "I think I should start working now," she said seriously. "Mommy always starts with your desk. That way," she says, "the important man upstairs has a clean start." Michael raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Emma pulled out a travel-sized packet of tissues. She unfolded one with delicate fingers and approached his desk with surgical solemnity. She began wiping the surface with slow, circular motions. Her technique was ineffective. Her tiny hands barely disturbed dust, but there was no mockery in her expression. She was focused, proud, utterly determined. "You're very dedicated, Emma," Michael observed. She smiled without looking up. "Mommy says when you do something, you should do it right, even if nobody sees you." That quiet wisdom made something shift inside him, something soft that had been buried beneath years of corporate armor. Then it happened. As Emma reached across the desk to clean near his laptop, her arm bumped a tall glass of water. It toppled with a sharp crash. Water spilled across the polished surface, threatening important financial documents. Emma froze, her eyes widening in horror. I'm sorry," she gasped, trembling. "I didn't mean to. Please don't fire Mommy. I was only trying to help." Michael quickly grabbed napkins, blotting the water. Then he knelt beside Emma, who looked ready to cry. "Hey," he said gently, placing a napkin in her hand. "It's okay. I messed everything up," she whispered. "You didn't," he said warmly. "You were doing your best. That's what matters most." She stared at him, unconvinced. He added, "Today, you've accomplished more than most people twice your size. And you're the youngest employee I've ever had." That brought hope back to her eyes. "Really? Really? And I think you're doing an excellent job." Emma finally exhaled, tension melting from her shoulders. She nodded solemnly, then carefully wiped the remaining water. As Michael returned to his chair, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine human connection. This child, with her honest eyes and oversized uniform, had stepped into his world and reminded him that kindness could exist in unexpected places. As Emma continued her determined cleaning, Michael leaned back and watched her, feeling a spark of something unfamiliar yet comforting stirring in his chest. He had spent years building an empire, but in one clumsy moment with spilled water and a child's apology, he'd remembered something far more valuable: humanity. The next morning, Michael couldn't concentrate. He stared at spreadsheets that once consumed his attention, but the numbers blurred. His mind kept drifting to a little girl in oversized clothes and a voice filled with impossible courage. He needed to know more about their situation. This wasn't curiosity or protocol, it felt deeply personal. He buzzed his assistant. "Find out which hospital Sarah Mitchell was taken to and get me her room number." "Sir, would you like to send flowers?" "No, I want to visit her personally." By afternoon, he stood outside a modest hospital room on St. Mary's 5th floor. Through the window, he could see her, pale but not fragile. There was quiet strength in how her hand rested across her stomach. Her face turned toward the window. He knocked gently. She turned, confusion flickering across her features. Then recognition. "You're the CEO," she said, trying to sit up. "Mr. Harrison, please don't get up," he said, stepping in with a calming gesture. She obeyed but blushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry about Emma. She didn't mean to. He shook his head firmly. She did nothing wrong. Sarah blinked, surprised by his warmth. I met Emma yesterday, Michael continued, pulling the guest chair closer. She walked into my office like she owned the place. Told me she was there to work for you. Sarah covered her mouth. Oh my God. She even brought cleaning supplies. Michael added with a gentle smile. A rag and spray bottle. Sarah let out a soft, tearful laugh. She always pays such close attention. I never thought she absorbed everything. She said you were sick. That you might lose your job. She thought if someone cleaned my desk, I'd be less upset about your absence. Sarah lowered her eyes. I told her too much about my worries. No, Michael said gently. You taught her how to care. Silence settled between them. Then he added, she told me a little about you. I hope you don't mind. But I wanted to hear your side too. Sarah's eyes were guarded. What did she say? That you're the best mommy in the world. Her breath caught. Michael leaned forward earnestly. Would you tell me your story? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Her voice was soft but steady as she told him everything, her computer science studies. Falling in love with someone who abandoned her when she got pregnant. Her family's rejection. Wandering from place to place while pregnant and hopeful. The position at Harrison Enterprises was the first time I could truly breathe. She said, I just knew I had to keep that job. And you did, Michael said quietly. You've done more with less than most people ever have to. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. Then, quietly, he said words that would stay with her forever. You're the strongest person I've ever met. That broke something in her. Tears welled and slipped down her cheeks. Michael sat silently, not looking away. There was nothing to fix, he just wanted her to know she was truly seen. Something changed after the hospital visit. Michael began walking through building areas he'd never noticed, maintenance corridors, supply closets, quiet stairwells that had once been invisible to him. Sarah returned to work 2 weeks later, thinner but steady, moving with quiet resolve, and Michael, whose days were typically scheduled to the minute, started making unscheduled detours. He'd check on renovations near lower floors, linger near restrooms under the pretense of reviewing cleanliness, any excuse to catch a glimpse of her. These encounters were always brief. She'd be cleaning mirrors or mopping hallway tiles. Her golden hair would be tied back with strands slipping loose around her cheeks. Even in exhaustion, there was something about her that stilled him, made corporate chaos fade away. One morning, he saw her carrying a heavy, sloshing bucket upstairs. The handle was cutting into her fingers. Her steps slow and careful. Without a word, he stepped forward and took it from her hands. Sarah startled and looked directly into his eyes. Mr. Harrison, let me. I was just heading up to check the HVAC reports, he said, already carrying the bucket upstairs. Clearly lying. She smiled knowingly. Of course you were. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something quiet but unmistakable. Then Sarah turned quickly and disappeared into the stairwell. The next afternoon, she found a clean white towel folded on her cart. On top was a yellow sticky note in familiar handwriting. Don't forget to take care of yourself. Some of us noticed the effort. She stood still, pressing the towel to her chest. She'd never received a note like this, simple, kind, genuine care rather than empty charm. She tucked it into her uniform pocket and told no one. Their encounters remained brief, often wordless, a glance across hallways, a nod in passing, but each moment carried unexpected weight. One evening, as the building emptied and Sarah cleaned the executive hallway's marble floor, Michael stepped from his office and paused in the doorway. She looked up, and their eyes locked. Neither moved for several heartbeats. Something flickered between them, awareness, warmth, maybe longing, but they both pulled back as if the intensity startled them. Good evening, sir, Sarah mumbled quickly. Turning away, Michael watched her walk toward the supply closet, her frame small but sure, then slowly returned inside. Behind the closed door, Sarah leaned against metal shelves, hand pressed to her racing heart. She bit her lip to keep from smiling too wide. Across the hall, Michael stood behind his glass office wall, watching her shadow disappear down the corridor. His fingers rested on the doorframe, jaw tight with realization. She's kind, strong, real, he thought. He'd spent his life in rooms filled with polished surfaces and hollow conversations, surrounded by people drawn to his title rather than his truth. But Sarah was different. No performance, no pretense, just courage and resilience and warmth. Without realizing it, Michael whispered aloud what had settled in his chest. I think I'm falling for her. Just when things had settled into something tender between them, the past returned with cruel timing. James Mitchell, Emma's biological father, appeared in the Harrison Enterprises lobby. Leaning casually against the marble reception desk. "I heard you work here," he said with that same smile that had once charmed Sarah when she was too young to recognize manipulation. "And I heard the CEO's developed quite the soft spot for his janitor." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What do you want, James?" He leaned closer. "A second chance. Maybe a first real chance to be part of Emma's life. I think I deserve that." "You left," Sarah said steadily despite her racing heart. "You never called, never checked on us. You don't deserve anything." James's expression hardened. "I also heard Michael Harrison is pretty generous to people he cares about. Maybe he could extend that generosity to me." Sarah stared in disbelief. "You're not here for Emma. You're here for money." He shrugged. "Money, opportunities, either works. But if people start asking uncomfortable questions about your special relationship with the boss, I doubt your position here stays secure." She walked away without another word, hands trembling. But it was too late. Within days, whispers spread through the building. "Did you hear about the janitor and the CEO? They say he visits her workstation every night. He canceled board meetings for her. His board of directors called an emergency meeting within the week. You're compromising your professional objectivity." One member stated, "This woman represents a liability." Another added, "There are murmurs reaching the media." The chairman warned, "You need to distance yourself immediately. If she remains employed here, we risk reputational damage." Michael listened without speaking, jaw set. When voices quieted, he stood slowly. "Let me make something absolutely clear," he said, voice calm but thunderous. "If Sarah Mitchell is being targeted or removed because of her association with me, then I will be the first to leave. Effective immediately." The room fell silent. Michael's gaze moved from one shocked face to the next. "She is not a liability. She is a human being. A devoted mother. One of our hardest working employees. And the woman I love." Audible gasps rippled across the boardroom. "I will not tolerate cruelty disguised as corporate policy," he continued firmly. "And if protecting her means this company loses some comfort, so be it." Word spread quickly. But Michael wasn't finished. He quietly hired one of the state's best family law attorneys and methodically built Sarah's case against James. 5 years of solo parenting. Financial independence. Consistent work history. Overwhelming proof of devoted motherhood despite abandonment. James showed up to one hearing looking smug. But when he saw the formidable legal team and Michael seated stoically in the back, his arrogance disappeared. 3 days later, James officially withdrew his petition and never contacted Sarah again. With the legal battle over, Michael focused on something more meaningful, giving Sarah a future matching her potential. Michael created a new position, technical advisor for internal digital transformation, and offered it to Sarah. At first, she hesitated. "I haven't touched code in years. I don't know where to begin." Michael smiled encouragingly. "Begin here with us. We need someone who understands the human side of technology. Someone who knows what it means to build things from the ground up." He arranged mentoring sessions with their IT team, provided her a new laptop, access to online courses, and whatever resources she needed. When she showed up for her first day in the new role, dressed in a simple navy blouse with her hair down and eyes steady with newfound confidence, every person in that room took notice. Sarah proved different from programmers who had coasted through degrees. She asked questions no one else thought to ask, cared about how systems impacted night staff, overlooked departments, the janitors who had once been her peers. Within a month, she had helped design a user-friendly interface that simplified the company's maintenance reporting software, cutting response times in half. People began stopping her in hallways, not for cleaning supplies, but seeking her professional opinion and technical expertise. Through it all, Emma bloomed. She came to the office every afternoon after preschool, skipping through the marble lobby like she owned it. She would wave to security guards, deliver crayon masterpieces to Michael's office, and ride on his shoulders during lunch breaks. "This place smells like mommy and happiness now," she announced one day, twirling in the elevator. To Michael, nothing had ever sounded more right. At first, he and Sarah were careful, a shared dinner here, a weekend walk there. But over time, boundaries blurred naturally. Sarah would stay late working on software prototypes, and Michael would bring her perfectly prepared coffee. Emma started calling him Mr. Michael, then simply Michael, and finally, without thinking, Dad. The night she said it, Sarah turned sharply, but Michael's eyes were already filled with tears. He didn't correct Emma, he just whispered, "I'd be honored." They weren't flashy or rushed. Instead, slowly and beautifully, they became a family through quiet moments, morning coffee shared at the office cafe, Emma's laughter echoing through halls, Sarah resting her head on Michael's shoulder in the elevator. They found something none had known they were searching for: home. 1 year later, Sarah stood confidently on stage before an auditorium filled with technology professionals and reporters. Behind her, a massive screen displayed her revolutionary new internal task management system, her first full-scale project led from concept to completion. When the final slide faded and applause filled the room, her hands trembled, but from pride, not fear. The next morning, headlines praised her, from janitor to tech visionary, a system built through empathy. Sarah barely skimmed articles. She only cared about Michael's reaction when he met her backstage. "You did it," he said, pulling her close. "No," she smiled. "We did it together." Spring arrived with blooming flowers and Saturday morning picnics under their favorite oak tree. On one perfect morning, after unpacking lunch, Michael pulled out a small velvet box. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Is that?" He didn't kneel dramatically. He simply took her hand, placed the box in her palm, and opened it gently. Inside was a gold ring with a single sapphire. "Simple and elegant. I don't need cameras or elaborate ceremonies," he said softly. "Just you, Emma, and this life we've already started building. Will you marry me, Sarah?" Her eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded, unable to speak, but her answer crystal clear. Emma, who had been chasing butterflies, ran over and saw the open box. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "Happy tears." Sarah laughed. Michael pulled Emma between them. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we make it official?" Emma grinned, grabbed both their hands, and declared firmly, "Yes, Mommy always said superheroes don't wear capes. But Michael, you're ours, right?" Sarah looked at him with overwhelming love. "He always has been." Michael smiled through his own tears. "I love you both more than anything I've ever built, owned, or dreamed of." "Then can we go home now? Together?" Emma asked. That evening, as the sun set over the city, the three of them stood together on their apartment balcony, watching lights twinkle below. Inside, their laughter rose like music. Michael reflected on the journey that brought them here. A little girl with golden curls and an oversized janitor's uniform had walked into his office one morning and brought with her the family he never knew he needed. They didn't need rescuing, he did. And in choosing love over power, presence over pride, he had finally found what he'd been searching for all along. 6 months later, they married in a simple ceremony in the same park where he proposed. Under the same oak tree, Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, declaring it the best day ever as she twirled in her special dress. Their story became legend at Harrison Enterprises, not as a fairy tale, but as proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with the simplest acts of love. Emma kept a framed photo on Michael's desk, the three of them laughing together, arms wrapped around each other, looking like they'd always been a family. Because in all the ways that truly mattered, they always had been. In quiet moments, Michael would watch Sarah coding at her computer while Emma colored nearby, and feel overwhelmed by gratitude. He had spent decades building a company, but they had built something infinitely more precious, a home filled with laughter, purpose, and unconditional love. And it all began with a 5-year-old's determination to save her mother's job, proving that the smallest acts of courage can change absolutely everything. The little girl who walked into his office that Monday morning hadn't just saved her mother's position, she had saved them all. Creating a family bound not by circumstance, but by choice, love, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserves a chance to build something beautiful. Their story was proof that love doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it comes wearing oversized uniforms and carrying spray bottles, ready to clean not just desks, but hearts, making space for the magic that happens when courage meets kindness.